Hello, Professor Bolus. I am Wyatt Allen, and this is my visual monograph video essay for Film 1 on It's a Wonderful Life. The 1946 film It's a Wonderful Life is a beloved American drama fantasy movie. The film is directed by Frank Capra and stars James Stewart and Donna Reed, along with many other brilliant actors. Although It's a Wonderful Life was nominated for many awards, it only won one for technical advancement for its new way of producing artificial snow. The film was not received well at all when it first came out, but once it entered the public domain, PBS and other broadcasting stations began to air it, and it became much wider known. But what most consider a holiday classic is actually jam-packed with Christian ideals and American propaganda. It's a Wonderful Life follows the life of George Bailey, a man that sacrifices everything he can to help his friends, family, and neighbors. The first 3/4 of the film depict the youth years of George Bailey and leads up to the day he finds himself in some very serious banking trouble and considers taking his life. Before he can, his guardian angel, Clarence, comes to his rescue and shows Bailey what life would be like if he had never existed.
Hey, what's going on around here? Well, this ought to be Martini's place. Look, who are you?
I told you, George, I'm your guardian angel.
Yeah, I know. You told me that.
After realizing how important he was to the people in his life, he becomes grateful to be alive and doesn't care what the future holds.
Yay! Hello, Bedford Falls!
He returns home to see that the whole town has pitched in to help him out of his troubles, and they all have a very Merry Christmas. One of the interesting aspects of the film is its structure. The structure of the film is nonlinear. The film begins about 3/4 of the way through the story. We backtrack all the way to the beginning. It then plays all the way from there. This nonlinear structure almost splits the film into two sections. In essence, 75% of the film is justified as context for where the film actually begins. This structure device is used to evoke sympathetic emotions from the audience. Because we know everything leading up to the main narrative, we just have to sit and watch it unfold. Pair that with watching George Bailey sacrifice everything he has for his community, and it leads to a sense of sadness that George never quite gets what he wants. There's quite a large cast in this film, and not in quantity, but in quality. There are some characters that only show up for a couple of scenes, but are still notable due to the content of the scene and/or performance. The characters I'm going to hone in on for the sake of this essay are George Bailey.
George here is executive secretary to take his father's place.
Well, no, but Uncle Billy is...
You can keep him on, that's all right. As secretary, you can hire anyone you like.
Dr. Cameron, now let's get this thing straight. I'm leaving right now. I'm going to school. This is my last chance. Uncle Billy here, he's your man.
But George, they'll vote with Potter otherwise.
Mr. Potter.
Bailey. Take me back there. Hurry up. Come on, look sharp.
And Clarence the Angel.
You're driving me crazy, too. I'm seeing things here. I'm going home and see my wife and family. You understand that? And I'm going home alone.
How am I doing, Joseph? Thanks. So I didn't have a drink.
George Bailey, played by James Stewart, is the protagonist of the film. He's a selfless stand-up guy in a small town who isn't afraid to drop what he's doing to help someone in need. George and his father, played by Samuel Hines, represent a humane community-centered philosophy. He learns later in the film that this philosophy will be rewarded when the entire town comes to his aid. Mr. Potter, played by Lionel Barrymore, is the antagonist of the film and represents the cold, uncaring nature of pure greed. He is the Scrooge of town, taking what he wants for himself and never looking back to see the havoc he's caused in the community. His plans to take down the Bailey building and loan are constantly foiled by George Bailey's selfless acts to save it and eventually the town. Clarence Oddbody, played by Henry Travers, acts as Bailey's mentor as he guides him through the world where he had never been born. Clarence Oddbody is an angel,
Angel, second class.
sent from heaven to save Bailey from taking his life by jumping off a bridge. If he is able to do this, he will obtain his wings. It's a Wonderful Life is an adaptation of a short story titled The Greatest Gift, written by Philip Van Doren Stern, and loosely based on Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. Initially, it was denied by many publishers, but once it got into the hands of Frank Capra, he fell in love with it. Many variations of the script were written. One of the more notable scripts was a version where Mr. Potter didn't exist, and instead, Bailey sees a version of the world if he was the Mr. Potter of the town. However, most of these scripts did not have the special magic that Capra saw in The Greatest Gift. Capra wrote the shooting script himself, incorporating many elements of the previous scripts. The film was shot at RKO Movie Ranch in Encino, California, and was filmed on the redressed set of the 1931 Western film Cimarron. The Bedford Falls set consisted of 3 blocks of 75 store facades, a working bank set, and a residential area. The film's production designers made sure that these sets could be flexible, as they would be going through changes throughout the film, such as when we see George Bailey grow up, and then when we see Bedford Falls in an alternate reality. Capra wanted the town to have a lived-in, authentic feel, to ground the film in reality, so he allowed all kinds of animals to roam the massive set to rough it up a bit. Lastly, the original bleached cornflake snow that they used in movies at the time were unacceptable for Capra, because he wouldn't be able to get the proper shots he wanted with them. He had the production design team create a new artificial snow, which was a mixture of soap, sugar, and water, called foamite. This foamite was great for production, as it removed the crunching sound of the cornflakes, and they were able to make footprints in the snow to make it that much more realistic. It's a Wonderful Life was Frank Capra's return to filmmaking after making propaganda films for World War II. The film depicts Capra's idea of pre, during, and post-World War II America, along with nods towards the Great Depression. The film deals with issues of self-worth, failure, and sacrifice, not unlike what a war veteran might have dealt with after the events of World War II. This film was also James Stewart's first film after returning from being a pilot in World War II, so a lot of the undertones of the film are what both men were dealing with at the time. Stewart's most notable scene in the movie was unscripted. Near the end of the film, when he prayed to God, he began to cry.
Father in heaven, I'm not a praying man, but if you're up there and you can hear me, show me the way. I'm at the end of my rope, right? Show me the way, oh God.
As I said those words, I felt the loneliness, the hopelessness of people who had nowhere to run, and my eyes filled with tears. I broke down sobbing, Stewart said in a Guidepost interview. The film is a reflection of the ideas of the individual versus community, or more specifically, individualism versus collectivism. Throughout the entire film, we watch as George Bailey sacrifices all his dreams and goals to satisfy the needs of the community, his family, his friends, and his wife. Bailey's character is contrasted by the Scrooge of town, Mr. Potter. Potter is constantly doing everything for himself and no one else but himself. Collectivism is emphasis on collective rather than individual action or identity. Throughout the film, we see George Bailey consistently sacrifice his needs for others. For example, when he jumps in the pond to save his brother, when he tells Mr. Gower that he put poison in the pills by mistake, when he gives up his college education to take over the bank when his father passes, when he gives up his college education again so his brother can take a job in an upcoming plastics business, when there is a run on the bank and he uses his honeymoon money to solve the issue, even down to making affordable housing in the town without making any profit from it. By the end of the film, when he refuses to let his uncle take the blame for misplacing $8,000, he's got nowhere else to run, nothing else to fall back on, and this pressure leads him to what he thinks is the only choice, ending his life. Individualism, on the other hand, is the exact opposite of collectivism. Individualism is a theory maintaining the political and economic independence of the individual and stressing individual initiative, action, and interests. The main character who voices this other moral stance in the film is none other than our private banker, Mr. Potter. Throughout the film, we constantly see and hear Potter citing the ideals of individualism, all for his own benefit. What in Potter's world is just business is in fact a heavily veiled stance on individualism. Every move Potter makes in the film is always benefiting him at others' expense. Stylistically, this film is shot like every other Hollywood film at the time. It's a Wonderful Life was Capra's first contracted film with RKO Studios with his new production company, Liberty Films. Now, what the film does differently is later in the story, when Bailey is viewing a world where he wasn't born, everything becomes darker. The snow becomes more intense, and generally the shot composition just feels off from what we've been watching. In this part of the film, we are getting a glimpse into a world where individualism wins. So Capra made sure that it feels dark and unsafe, like no one is watching your back. For the most part in this essay, I've been overlooking the film's heavy Christian themes, but let's take a look to get the full picture. Looking from an even higher vantage point, this film is really about the guardian angel Clarence and his mission to earn his wings. The film begins with Clarence the Angel being assigned to help George Bailey in his time of need.
You sent for me, sir?
Yes, Clarence. A man down on Earth needs our help.
Splendid. Is he sick?
No, worse. He's discouraged.
Clarence and the other angels look into Bailey's past to get the full story of his life. When the angels are finished reviewing Bailey's life, Clarence appears on the bridge and jumps off the bridge instead of Bailey. Bailey jumps in after to save him. As they are drying off after jumping into the river, Bailey makes a comment about how he wished he had never been born. This sparks an idea within Clarence, and he decides to show Bailey a world in which he had never been born to convey how important his life is. Christian themes heavily impacted the writing of this film. The Christian idea of service to the community and the Catholic belief that good deeds will get you into heaven are the backdrop of this entire story. If we throw out the cultural significance of World War II and the ideas of individualism versus collectivism, the movie's quote-unquote lesson is, it's not what we achieve of ourselves, but what we give of ourselves, for that alone redeems our existence. Capra's expression of religious beliefs is shown more than told, as while there are many Christian references, the film seems to take a more fantastical than religious approach, hence I labeled the film fantasy at the beginning. It's a Wonderful Life, to this day, still has a large audience that watches it annually, myself included. With the film's masterful use of narrative, theming, production design, and its placement in American history, it's hard not to root for George Bailey and his journey with Clarence. Together, the two characters find out how important Bailey is to the people in his life, something I think we can all relate to. This lesson serves to reinforce the positive aspects of collectivism and the negative aspects of individualism, clearly biasing the side of collectivism. Capra's fantastical and heartwarming narrative can also be seen as a vehicle for his post-World War views of American society and his religious beliefs, clearly biasing on the side of collectivism.